Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight to our program that is a collaboration between the Wayne Public Library and the Laurelwood Arboretum here in Wayne, New Jersey. This program is fall gardening, preparing for the spring in a safe way. And I'm just so happy that you're all able to attend tonight. And I had the opportunity to start to learn more about this. And I'm really fascinated by how much information there is out there on this topic. And I hope you all learned something too. So welcome, Rashmi. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, Patty. Thank you for inviting me. I'm all excited.
And so tonight, your topic is going to be about bulbs and also about tick prevention. And so let's start first with the bulbs. And as you taught me that last week, there's a why, a where, and a when about bulbs.
Yep, that's right. So we'll start with the why. Why do you plant bulbs? Why do you plant them right now? One of the reasons I do it is when you're up in spring and you've gone through winter, you've looked at the bare ground, it's brown, it's kind of dull green, and the only things you see are evergreens. And then starting like after you're done shoveling the snow, you've grown tired of it all, and then suddenly you see these little sprouts coming through the ground, and you know for a fact, oh, you know it's there. It's like spring is here. So you want to be greeted with those little bits of green, and they turn into these beautiful flowers that it's like the first thing you see in spring is little bits of green and flowers, and then you think back to the times when you actually dug the ground around right now, like September, October, and you planted bulbs. So I wanted to introduce the concept of different kinds of bulbs. So something as small as this, or something as big as this. They're all different kinds of bulbs. So you do have two true bulbs. Those would be your daffodils and your tulips. Then you also have different kinds. You have tubers, you have so you have corms, tuberous roots. They all fall under the bulb family. So when you go to the market and you think of planting bulbs for spring, you'll get a whole myriad of things that you can put in right now. So just remember, there are things in there. There are like things like dahlias, which please do not plant them in autumn. They're not meant to be planted right now. Plant them in spring. The spring bulbs are separate. So I do have examples of dahlias, but I just want to emphasize that these things do not go in the ground right now. They are lovely and all that, but you would plant all your crocuses, snowdrops. You would plant.
You mentioned something before that there are different kind of bulbs, and you said a word that I wasn't familiar with. That was corms, cormes, and then also tubers. Am I pronouncing those correctly?
Yes, you're pronouncing that correctly. So so you have, like I said, there's true bulbs, which is hold on, let me just start this. So you have daffodils and tulips. Then you do have the corms, which are the crocuses.
I never heard that term. I always thought it was just bulbs or rhizomes.
Oh, okay. So yeah, these are snow crocuses. So these are the corms. They call them corms, but they look very similar to, they are bulbs. Anything that stores food and can produce a flower in the spring is essentially falls in the bulb family.
You had mentioned that there are fall bulbs as well as spring bulbs, and that's also new information to me. So is it because it's a flower that needs to sprout at a certain time of year that you would then plant them in the spring versus the fall?
Okay, so the fall bulbs which you would plant right now, they are the kind that require winterization. They needed to be cold for them to produce flowers in the spring, you need them to stay cold for 12 to 13 weeks. Spring bulbs, however, they are the spring bulbs. Tubers like dahlias and all, they do not survive in our winters here. They do not overwinter well. Maybe in a slightly warmer zone they would, but right now it's not like they would not, they absolutely would not. They would die. So just make sure all the dahlias are dug up at the end of the season. So when you're like when your dahlia showing is over, let's see these. So these are my dahlias. When your dahlia showing is over, you would dig those tubers up, those and you would store them in the garage, dust them off, dry them off, make sure they're packaged properly, and just store them in a cooler place. But you cannot leave them in the ground. So even if like there are instances where if you mulch it a lot, cover it with a lot of mulch, the dahlia might survive, but almost always it doesn't come back up. So that's one of the bulbs that you would plant in spring. Right now, what we're talking about is the fall bulb planting. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
So this is in my garden. We actually had some construction done on, we had some walls rebuilt, some retaining walls built. So this was actually in January. You wouldn't wait this long, but the ground was frozen below there. There was soil on top, so I actually utilized that. You do not need, the bulbs do not sit too deep. Depending on the size of the bulb, so for example, anything this small would go in double the size or at the most triple the size. So anything that's like 1 inch would go in maybe 3 inches, 2 inches. Anything like, okay, I don't have tulips here, but if you have tulips, they would normally go in 8 inches and 8 inches, give them 8 inches around. So this is one of the ways of planting bulbs. For this, I use something that looks like this, and you can dig holes. So it has like, it actually tells you like this is 3 inches. I don't know if you can see. So this is 3 inches deep. It goes in 3 inches, and then you can further dig it. You can further increase it, so you can go in 6 inches at total. But
Excuse me, Rashmi, after
yeah.
you are done with the PowerPoint, we can see that tool again and get a better close-up of that.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I was sharing. Hold on. Okay. So for planting those, I use this, and it has inches on it, so you can see it goes up to 3 inches here. It's not exactly very sharp now, but these things can dig into soil, and you'd get exactly the amount that you'd require. The hole would be the precise size for largish bulb like a tulip. So this I mostly used for tulips.
You had mentioned the layering of bulbs. Is that, I think you had told me the term, it's called lasagna gardening?
Yeah. One of the things with lasagna gardening is you can actually layer different kinds of bulbs. This is actually even done in pots. Like if you're in an area where you have a lot of deer, you don't want to be planting tulips in the ground, unless you have a foolproof way of making sure that they don't eat them. So if you have a pot, you would put the larger bulbs, the smaller. So the smallest bulbs would essentially sit on top. Then they would alternate with the slightly larger bulbs, and then the largest bulbs would go on the bottom. So as they sprout, you'll get all different kinds of flowers at the end. So for example, you would not plant Fritillaria inside a pot, but like there are large bulbs that, like even the tulips, they would go deep, like 8 inches, followed by maybe crocuses. Hyacinth's a good example. Yeah, and if you've already bought your bulbs, it might be a good idea to start getting them in the ground as soon as possible. I just found 2 rotted ones in here. You want to make sure that your bulbs are like, they should be solid, they shouldn't be nicked, they shouldn't be like dented. or rotted. The rotted ones should be thrown out immediately, even if you don't have time to um, get them in the ground immediately. Just make sure you put them in a very nice, cool place. But they do have a tendency to start rotting if they hit anything warm or if they're wet. So you want to avoid that.
You had also mentioned when we spoke last week about scheduling your garden that you can actually plan what will bloom at a certain time so that you have a continuous bloom throughout the summer, spring and summer.
When you buy one of these, like usually on the back, I don't know. These, by the way, are phenomenal. They really work well. They're deer-resistant tulips. So if you want to get tulips in your garden, this is one way of doing it. And they all bloomed and they were left alone. So yeah, but essentially it gives you an idea the kind of bulbs that are, well, they're available with these guys, but the time period that the bulbs bloom, the height of the bulb, and like in early spring.
Someone is inquiring about fall planting bulbs that are deer resistant, and I recall you're telling me that that tulip bulbs are veritably deer candy. So I'm sure you can share what we need to do for making sure that we have deer resistant selections.
Since we live in a highly deer infested area, well, I do anyway, you do not want to plant tulips. There are certain things that you can definitely plant. The little symbol on the side usually says like no deer with a cross on it. You have fritillaria, you have alliums, you have muscari, and you have hyacinths. These are the 4 examples here. So the early spring, okay, the early spring crocuses and snowdrops. You can, this photo was taken in Laurelwood. You can see the snowdrops and you can see the spring crocuses blooming early spring. So these would be some of the first bulbs that bloom. So you have hyacinths blooming, and you can see the little peonies emerging at the same time. So when around mid-spring, when the hyacinths in full bloom, you can see other growth that starts to come out. You have mid-spring, late spring tulips. So these photos are, one of them is in my garden, that's solitaire tulip, which was left alone by deer. That bloomed well. Tulips, they look really nice when they're amassed, when you plant them together, like if you plant quite a few bulbs together. The second picture is they're late spring tulips, and they're down south. There are a couple of gardens that you can go visit. You can get an idea as to how pretty those things look when they're planted together. It looks, this is one of the examples of mass planting. You can try and do the same in your garden with different bulbs, if not tulips.
I just wanted to interject before we move on. You and I had spoken last week about when you're planting them in clusters, you'll have a potential opportunity to have it look like it does in the Netherlands. That's what they do,
Yeah.
right, with their crops. And I believe you also mentioned a garden somewhere in New Jersey that plants also tulips in such a way that you would think you were in the Netherlands because we have a very similar climate.
Yep. So down south near Holmdel or Englishtown, there are a couple of tulip farms, and you can essentially pay to go in. They charge you by per like if you want to harvest tulips. They're quite happy letting you do that. They sell you, they will sell bulbs, and it's interesting. Like every time you think of planting any kind of bulbs, you want to make sure you get the soil tested in your garden, because bulbs will thrive between 6 to 7. The pH requires that it requires for optimal bulb growth is 6 to 7, the pH level. it would, so you would start off by testing any kind of soil in your garden. Second thing is when you want to plant bulbs, you want to make sure that it is in a well-drained area. You do not want your bulbs to sit in water. You do not want them to, so you would essentially plant it maybe on even a slope. Like if you see naturalized daffodils you can see them on a hillside, and they seem to do best there. One of the reasons being is that it is well-drained soil over there. When you plant a bulb, you would put, they require phosphorus. So you would dig a hole, put some phosphorus at the base, and then plant the bulb on top. This is right now. So I'm just thinking.
I'm sorry, what do you put in the base of it? I didn't quite
You
catch
put
that.
anything which contains phosphorus. So bulbs require, they do, that is essentially like, it's a fertilizer. It's like you have the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So bulbs require phosphorus. So sometimes they have like plant bulb food, but if you've used maybe bone meal, that works well for bulbs. Or they have something called bulb tone. You can use that. So you put that at the base of the like, the hole that you've dug. And then you plant the bulb, and then you cover it up. One of the things is, in spring, you do not fertilize these bulbs, because they start rotting. Like if you put phosphorus during springtime when they're starting to bloom, you do not put it in then. You put it in like, around this time. Then let's see, you do not let, like I mentioned, you do not let them sit in water. They will rot. Yeah, that's essentially the like the basic care of bulbs. You have, so this year I planted alliums. They are essentially from the onion family, and the deer do not eat them most of the times. I've heard of people saying that they eat alliums. That hasn't happened in my yard, at least. But so in one of the pictures, you can see the white alliums, which are blooming at the time the peonies are have started to bloom. And later on in the season, like late spring or early summer, you have the purple alliums. So alliums are, I don't know, it was my first year planting alliums, and it was really, it was lovely. Like these guys were, the purple alliums were pretty tall, and they towered above the others. In the second picture, you can see the alliums have finished blooming, and you can see the seed heads. Okay, then lilies are something that we plant during spring. These guys don't really sit that well in autumn. So these have been planted early in the spring. But they make a nice, they do really well in the same conditions as the rest of the bulbs. So eventually, can you see that? So that's what your allium will look like. And we use this for Christmas decor. I know they use this in Ringwood State Park. They use this for the in the manor where they spray paint this. A lot of times people will actually, it's a good time to harvest them right now. So you can spray paint them and then use them as decor. So, but that is one of the things. So it gives you like, it keeps reminding you of what you planted right now, all the way into next winter. So
it looks like a fairy wand, for like a giant fairy wand for
yeah,
for the little kids to have. So I know that in Laurelwood they have a little fairy garden, but that's way bigger than what they have there.
oh, maybe they can utilize this. I just plucked it out and like off the garden. Okay, so now one of the things that when you plant bulbs, you want to make sure that you plant them. It's like you start off with bulbs, and the bulbs then they give you those beautiful flowers, And then they have those leaves, the tulips, the daffodils. They have these big floppy leaves which start yellowing and dying out. And you don't want to be anywhere, you don't like them in the landscape. But you have to remember, you have to leave those leaves alone in the landscape, because those leaves are essentially photosynthesizing, and the bulbs are being provided with more energy for next year. So a lot of people will remove the whole thing, and then they wonder why the bulbs don't come back the following spring, because essentially you haven't let them harness, you haven't let them harness the food. Their food supply hasn't been, it hasn't been established in there. So you you want to mix the bulbs with some other perennials. Like for instance, in these pictures, I have zinnias, I have something called snowland chrysanthemums. Then there's perennials called balloon flowers, which do well, they're deer resistant. And that they kind of, once they start blooming, they start hiding those leaves. And then they start growing to a certain height. And then you don't see the bulbs at all, then they kind of disappear. Um,
Can I
oh,
interject with a question?
yeah,
You were talking about leaving the leaves. I actually have grown irises, and I'm not even a gardener, and I have had great success with the irises I plant, which I learned are rhizomes.
yeah.
And I was told that after the bloom dies, I think it's called deadheading, to remove the dead flowers, and that you could potentially get a second growth. Am I right about that?
Some irises, yeah, but not most. After a lot of the irises here, there are actually reblooming irises which will come back again in autumn. Those things are they're kind of a little more, they're not that commonly found, unless you look at, like, different catalogs. But with irises, one of the things that tell you to do is, once it's done blooming, you cut the leaves in a fan shape. So you have like stalks of irises, they look like, they're literally blades, but flattened, dorsoventrally flattened. So you cut it to a fan shape, and that actually then allows the iris to, to photosynthesize, but at the same time, it will prevent it from, looking up. I think one of the reasons they do it is that it keeps it low to the ground. That's what I thought, because I never really quite understood why they would cut it to a fan shape. And but it's still photosynthesizing, and it prevents it from growing another set of leaves. That's what I was told. So, but that's what we do with irises. But that does seem to work. Um, Okay, so these are dahlias. Like I said, we don't plant dahlias around this time, but they are present like almost to the end of the season. Right now, these dahlias in full bloom in my garden, and I mean, I really enjoy them. Strangely enough, they're true to form. I don't know if you can see this. So this was one of the dahlias that, this one is called Mingus and Lady Darlene. That's Lady Darlene. So it was literally the picture on the packet and the flower itself. So this one did well. Then I just like to share these. These are the pom-poms. They're blooming. They're in full bloom right now. Look at that. And that. This one is something that we dug up 2 years ago in a row, and it's been coming back because we put it back in the ground in April and May. So
Let me ask a beginner's question here, since I'm unfamiliar with bulbs. If I wanted different colored bulbs, do you have to buy a bag of red ones and a bag of pink ones and a bag of white and red ones, or is it a mixed bag, so to speak? How do you get all those wonderful colors?
okay, so this is the bulb that you plant. If it says it's a yellow bulb, it's going to grow nothing other than a yellow flower. So look at the package, look at the picture on it, and pretty much that's exactly what you will get. So that's you're true to form. There's very little like there's very little differentiation from the actual picture itself, like I showed you right here. You do get like, if you want to grow daffodils in large quantities, you can like group them together. They look really pretty. They have many different kinds. I would definitely recommend planting daffodils this autumn, because one, in this area, they grow pretty well. Secondly, they're completely deer resistant. Nothing seems to eat them. And apart from killing them by drowning them, that's pretty much, it's a surefire way of getting bulbs to grow, this spring. Um,
We did have a question in our chat that said, do you have any advice on which fall bulbs for spring are easy to care for a beginner gardener? And it sounds like dahlias might fit that bill.
yeah, but dahlias you would plant in the spring, right? Not right now. But so okay, so I would, so these are my favorite. So these are muscari. They're called grape hyacinths. These are the slight lighter colored ones. You also get these deep blue colored muscari, and they're really pretty. They come early to mid spring. Then you can follow them up with hyacinths. Hyacinths are also easy to grow. Same principle. Soil pH slightly acidic, and they do well. You can do mass plantings of these. You get a huge variety of colors in these, and they're, like I said, they're easy to grow. Then of course this year I'm going to be planting these guys again. These are the alliums, and hopefully you get a huge, like you have these tiny drumstick alliums, and they're like really cute. They're really small, and they're like dual colored. Yeah, if you can find them, definitely plant those. Again, deer resistant. And we're gonna try fritillaria this time. These are slightly different, but most of the packages, they give you instructions on how tall these things are gonna get, how uh, around what time they bloom. So when when you go anywhere, okay, so one of my favorite places to go to is New York Botanical Gardens. Right? It's like they have a nice store there. This was one of the finds, that the deer resistant tulips, like I mentioned before. Then you have crocuses. This is there's somebody who has turf, like grass, like a nice lawn, and they have naturalized it by planting like millions of crocuses. I have no idea how they maintain their turf grass, but those, like in the spring, you can see little ones popping all over the. It's like instead of grass, they have crocuses, but then the grass takes over. So that is one thing that you can do. And one of the ways that you can plant these, I was told, is when you aerate your grass, you have those little plugs that come out. So you remove the plugs and then you put the little crocuses in there. The bulbs are really, really, really tiny. So, and then that's one way of naturalizing the lawn. Say, you might not have like phenomenal grass after that, but that definitely looks very pretty.
So I'd
But
like to ask a question of the bulbs that you were just talking about. You showed about 4 or 6 different bags. Are all these ones that you would plant in the fall,
yeah, these are all fall bulbs. So
including the deer resistant ones?
yeah, all your tulips. See, the only thing that you wouldn't plant right now, and they're usually not, sometimes they are available, like they will put dahlias out. You don't want to put them in the ground right now, but um, so apart from dahlias, I think pretty much everything that's in the market right now, you can plant. Yeah, so like dahlias and cannas, I see cannas are tropical, more to my, they're tubers and they look pretty. Some people love them, but you do not want them in the ground right now. You don't want dahlias and cannas in the ground right now. Everything else, yeah.
There
So
was a question too as to when do tulip bulbs get planted?
bulbs will get planted now. They will, so roughly starting now to before the ground gets really hard, or before your first frost. So you can definitely plant them now. They need to go in now because they need about 12 to 13 weeks of cold for them to start, start blooming in spring.
One of the things we talked about last week is the fact that to protect your tulips, which are the veritable deer candy, was planting them in pots. You had mentioned or using netting, but also you said that to surround tulip bulbs
Yeah, so
by a ring
okay, so
of
this was
daffodils.
something that was so this is not foolproof, but I've heard people do this. So they plant a tulip bulb in the middle and they'll surround it by daffodils. Now daffodils, the bulbs are toxic by themselves. So the deer apparently or the critters, they will try and eat just the daffodil, but they won't like it. So they might leave the tulip alone. But again, that's not a sure for a thing. So, and it's almost a guarantee that those critters will find the tulips in the middle and they leave the tulips like the daffodils in a circle. You might not get a tulip, you definitely get daffodils. Um, yeah, so, but you can definitely plant anything in pots. This was one of the things where we had forced bulbs inside. There are actually 6 bulbs in that pot, but only these were fragrant tulips and they actually were fragrant. They smelled really lovely inside. So if you can get a hold of these, you might or might not. So one of the key factors for planting bulbs inside is, like I said, they need 12 to 13 weeks of winterization. You would put them in a pot, put them outside in a garage, or even like I have a cold frame, so I'll leave them in there. Make sure you keep that soil damp. You cannot, it shouldn't dry out and it shouldn't be too wet either, because then if it'll rot. So these were forced indoor tulips, and these are fragrant. So you can do that with pretty much, of course, like most of the stores sell paper whites. They sell like the mini hyacinths or even regular size hyacinths. Those are the ones which come out 12 to 13 weeks of winterization. So that's how we would, and we did do one of the pots with multiple bulbs in it, and they were all interspersed and they started blooming. Or you can do you can have like a long planter. You can start with, like, you would imitate what you have in the garden. So you would start with a muscari, then you would have like daffodils next to it, and you could plant all these bulbs in a row and watch them around when you bring them back inside the house in, say, February after 12, 13 weeks. You can actually see them imitate what you would see in the spring. So you'd have the muscari blooming, the daffodils, and step by step, you'd have the next ones come out. So you can definitely do that indoors, and towards the end, you'd have the tulips. So yeah, so
We had another question about what the brand of bulbs are that you're using that are in those packages.
okay, so I'm not supposed to advertise the brands. You actually get bulbs in pretty much any any store, any garden center. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but okay. So like I said, maybe I shouldn't have, but this was New York Botanical Gardens. If you do go there right now, or go to any garden center, go to any go to any like even to Laurelwood, go take a look at what you like over there. Maybe you can ask some of the people there. They would definitely be able to tell you where those bulbs come from. But yeah, like I know Home Depot, Lowe's, everybody's familiar with this. So all those centers will start selling bulbs now. So garlic is one of the it's one of the best bulbs to plant. These are hard neck garlics that you would plant right now. You do have soft neck garlics. You do not plant those right now. Hard neck garlics, they're the ones which are sold at the, you get both kinds, but most of these are sold in upstate New York at the garlic festival. Now you can grow your own and have your own little festival in your backyard or front yard. But they are very easy to grow, and you can grow them from seed, but you don't need to. You just separate one of the cloves and stick them in the soil under similar conditions as the rest of the bulbs, and you'll get the whole clove of garlic to enjoy. So I would highly recommend, whoever asked me, what bulb should I plant, I would say hardneck garlic, but not the ones you get in the bags. Okay, so one of the things is that don't plant the garlic bulbs that um, you get in the grocery store. They come in this little little tube. So those bulbs come from, not from here. Their roots have been seared off. They've been cleaned out so well that they do not have a chance of growing. So if you look at bulbs which are sold locally, you'll always find that they have like a root to the bar. They have roots. So plant those. Don't plant the bulbs that you find in the grocery store. They're like literally chlorinated, they're clean, the rootscape has been completely entirely eliminated. So when people ask me why didn't it grow, I'm like, that wasn't a viable bulb. So that's one of the things. It's not viable at all. But if you go upstate New York, they grow bulbs in prodigious quantities. They also have a garlic festival coming up in October. They have garlic ice cream there. I'm dying to go try that. So I don't know why, but yeah. So, but that was one of the things. Definitely plant garlic bulbs.
I am a huge fan of garlic, and I lived in California, and there's the Gilroy Garlic Festival that unfortunately I did not have a chance to attend. But I tell you, driving through Gilroy on my way to Route 66, you could smell it, and it was wonderful. And I totally agree. Wherever there's garlic, there's a party.
Oh,
And then you get your dibber, and then you can also open a bottle of wine. And if you need to cork it, although I don't understand recorking wine bottles, there you go. You're all set. So.
yeah.
So I had a couple questions before we move on to the second part of your presentation. When we had talked last week, you had mentioned the fact that the bigger the bulb, it has a bigger flower bloom, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't realize there was a correlation.
Yeah. So when you're choosing bulbs, and if you can, like a lot of times they're packaged and you cannot see inside. But if you're like a lot of the nurseries, they have bulbs in these stands. Like, you can pick and choose what you want. So make sure that the bulbs are, obviously they're not rotted, they're not dented, they do not have any, visible damage. And essentially you pick a bulb that's solid. Like, think of it as if you wanted to eat it. So if you go onion hunt, if you want to buy onions, you look for the onion which is perfect, you want to eat that. So think of the same way you do with a bulb for planting. And the bigger the bulb, the bigger the flower. So the allium bulbs, or even the fritillaria bulbs, they're huge because these guys get pretty tall. This guy is gonna be, whoa, it's 36 inches. It's going to be 36 inches tall. That's like a yardstick. So yeah, that's roughly the size of the fritillaria. I'm excited. I'm going to be planting these
Another
soon.
thing that I had a question about is the fact that I believe on the packaging, and also probably all gardeners know this, but again, I'm a beginner gardener here, is the fact that there are zones for different kind of bulbs and different kind of flowers across the United States.
Yep.
So is there a specific zone that New Jersey is in that you want to look for bulbs for this zone?
So most of the garden centers would sell you bulbs which essentially are for 6B. We are 6B in Wayne. So it usually says from zones 3 to 7 or 3 to 9. That's what you would look for. But most of the times what they sell right now is meant for our zone. So any of these. So just remember to read, everything's pretty much given on here. So just remember to read the directions on the back. So that should essentially cover you.
The other question I had, and you touched on it earlier, but I wanted to verify. You said about testing your soil that you wanted to make sure you had the correct pH of the soil. And I believe you had mentioned to me that you can actually do a soil sample and
Yeah.
send it to Rutgers for an analysis.
Yeah. So the Passaic County Master Gardeners Association, there's an office right here, behind Gary's Wine and Marketplace on Route 23. Earlier on, you could go there and pick up the kits, soil testing kits. You can actually go through any private company also, but for us, this is like a phenomenal resource to have. You send away the package and they give you like incredible details about like what kind of soil you have, what's your pH, what you need to do to amend it. And if you actually let them know that, like for instance, I had a Rosa rugosa, I had a rose, which is like grown by the seashore, and it wasn't doing well. So I sent away and they told me that the pH wasn't right. And when I mentioned that I had a certain plant that I was, looking to grow in that soil, they sent me the details. They send you a, like, it's pretty, it's like incredibly detail oriented, that entire report, that whole analysis. And for anything, for any kind of planting that you want to do in your garden, you want to get your soil tested first. So, and they recommend that you get your soil tested every couple of years, because if you have like sandy soil, you have loamy soil, you have, so if you have sandy soil, it drains really fast, like, the water goes down. But if you have like, we have in Passaic County, we have really good soil. Really happy about that. Holds fertilizer, it'll hold water, just don't overwater it. So that's it's kind of happy. It's it's a good thing to know. But you can send away for that. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about planting bulbs in a vignette. I forgot about that. So if you have an already established perennial garden and you want to plant bulbs within that, like, within an area with plants in it, and you have perennials there, but you do not want to disturb the roots of the perennials. So if you have like a plant, so the middle of the plant, like the center or the tallest region of the plant, you go about 3 inches out from the center of it, and you can plant bulbs in there, like in and around wherever you want to do you want like a certain color coming out through, in spring through there. So you'd use something called a dibber. So I don't know if you can see it. You're going to show me, or you can look it up online. And essentially what a dibber does, it pushes the roots of the perennial plants. It doesn't cut through. So you have a established perennial, you don't want to slice through its root ball. So you can essentially use something like this, or you can use something that looks like a it looks like something you dig out marrow from a bone. So
So what you're holding up there is a wine stopper for.
yeah, sorry,
I immediately
I lost my
recognized
dibber.
but the dibber that I looked up to see what it looked like is like a wine stopper that has a handle, and it
Yep.
seems like a very easy tool to utilize to do exactly what you're expressing.
Yep. So you would, if you wanted to plant in an established garden, you would use these tools, and it works out to be really, it's convenient, it's fast, and you're not killing anything over there. So that was one of the tools I wanted to show.
Are there any other questions that people want to submit about bulbs? We're going to now move on to the next topic, which is about ticks and the dangers that they actually present during this weather during the autumn. Okay, no other questions. All right, so yes, I was unaware that ticks were not. I always thought that they were only prevalent in the summertime. And as a kid, unfortunately, I seemed to be a magnet to them, and my mother was always having to remove them, and it was horrifying as a child. But I was surprised to find out from Rashmi that ticks are still very potent and cause an issue all the way through the autumn and during those warmer months still. So I believe you said there are 3 different types of ticks in New Jersey.
Yeah, so there are 3 hard-bodied ticks. So you have soft-bodied and you have hard-bodied ticks. Okay, so there's different kinds of ticks. One of the things is that we have in New Jersey pretty much every tick that you can think of. So if you see a map, this is like from the CDC website. If you see a map of all the different kinds of ticks in all the different areas, New Jersey, unfortunately, is an area which we have all the, we essentially have all of them. So you have the, the first one is the one we should be, which concerns us the most is the one which causes Lyme disease. Ticks have a 2-year period that they, it's like the life cycle of a tick, it goes for 2 years. So you have the egg, you have the nymph, the larvae, and the adults. Starting with so say for the first year for spring, you have like an uninfected. So one of the reasons that they feed on blood is so that they can molt or they can produce eggs. So you have ticks which hatch out of eggs, then you have the larvae. The larvae will attach to the first host. The first host, if it's infected, that larvae will suck the blood, then it transfers the parasite into the larvae. The larvae will fall off, molt. That blood meal will essentially let it molt to the next stage. The next stage again latches on to the next host, feeds again. It goes back to sleep for the winter, comes back the next spring. So essentially what you have is with every tick, you have the capacity to have, so you have the first, second, then the second year spring, and then the nymph develops into an adult tick. So all those feedings, if you can see the picture, you can see all the different hosts that it has. And they're called deer tick for a reason. Their primary host, like they prefer, it's almost like they're at the height of the deer. So when they climb the, apart from the fact that we have a lot of deer here, when they climb, they're questing. So they have these, the front 2 legs, they go up and they quest for a host and they latch on and they drink blood. So you wanna, if you get bitten by the first stage, which is the nymph, and obviously you do not have you do not have a living parasite in you, then that nymph won't necessarily carry it onto the next next host. So depending on the stage of the tick, there's a likelihood of it transmitting the disease on. So if by any chance, God forbid, you get bitten by a tick, you find a tick on you, you need to take it off, make sure that, keep a hold of it. For that, you would require, they sell something called a tick key. Please don't pour things on it. Don't put any kind of Vaseline. Do not put any alcohol, because the tick will then regurgitate its stomach contents into the bloodstream. If it gets, so the easiest way is you do get something called a tick key, which I've seen them sell in like Bed Bath and Beyond. Right now, they seem to hold a lot of them, because towards the end of the summer is for the last stage before it winters in the leaves. That's when it's actively searching for hosts. Summer is a time when ticks are abundant, but they're still active right now. So when you go in the leaves in the fall, when you're planting, just make sure you wear proper clothing, you spray yourself. You would wear long pants, you would tuck your socks within, you tuck your pants in your socks, you would wear long sleeves. If a tick does crawl on you, you're wearing all this protection, doesn't mean that you're okay. The tick, you're doing all this so that it doesn't come in contact with your skin. So the minute it comes in contact with your skin is when it will latch on. You want to prevent that from happening. So after you're done gardening, wherever you are, you're going hiking, you come home, you do a tick check, you remove your clothing, and literally take a hot shower. So hopefully whatever was in there, then you wash it in warm water, hot water, and you dry it on high heat. So just make sure that you follow these instructions to the letter, no matter where you are.
What is the best way to remove a tick? I had my age. I'm a child of the 70s, and my mother was a smoker, and God help me, she would just tell me to stand still, and she'd take that lit cigarette and just, get there, was gone. And she was a nurse. I have to add that she was a
Okay.
nurse. So I figured she knew what she was doing, but it was horrifying as a child. I understand there's probably a better way, and with probably less smokers out there, then there must be a better and safer way to remove a tick.
Yeah, so things have changed a little bit more now. So you can use a pair of tweezers, or you can use something called a tick key, which unfortunately I do not have right now. It looks like it literally looks like a flattened. I could draw you a picture, but it's available in a lot of the stores. It's got a little notch in it, so you hook a tick on it and pull it out, and it works really well. Even like a pair of tweezers, of course. You hold the mouth parts and you yank it off the skin. If it's been on there for long, you can actually tell, as opposed to, if you can get it out much quicker, it hasn't been on there. But still, you have to get those things tested. You have to make sure that uh, you do not exhibit any symptoms, or just get it tested. So I think Ocean County is the only place where the Rutgers, program does they'll identify the test tick for you, but they won't, they don't do the testing or give you medical advice. So hopefully, you can go down to your local GP and get that done. But yeah, that's
It sounds a lot safer than one I had to endure.
oh
Uh,
gosh, I can.
I know my mother loved me, and I know she was doing her best to help me out there, but it was truly horrifying. I also wanted to ask you a question, and I'm going to just bring up the slide again that you had about the three different kinds of ticks. Do all these different ticks, I believe you said that we have all three in New Jersey, and
Yeah.
do all of them carry the different diseases, such as Lyme disease and the other diseases, or is it only one type? Um, or do certain of these three different types of ticks tend to go to deer, whereas one of the other three might go to humans?
Okay, so the first one that you see here, the black-legged tick, that they call it a deer tick. So you'd have that one is the one which carries Lyme disease. There's something called anaplasmosis, babesiosis, and powassan. So all these things are, well, they're carried by these ticks. It's not just Lyme disease. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds of diseases that can be transmitted by this tick alone. Then the Lone Star tick, which is the second one here. It transmits something called tularemia, rabbit fever. Then there's something called meat allergy, which when the parasite, when it gets transmitted, the person exhibits a meat allergy, and this has actually been recorded in the sense that they cannot tolerate meat if they're bitten by the tick carrying that certain parasite. So, be careful. You might not be able to enjoy steak anymore. No,
Now, can you not tolerate red meat only, or is it all meat?
you cannot tolerate red meat. So, yeah, it's
Wow.
pretty much from the things that I've read and the things that they've documented, they said that it's a red meat allergy. So, but they call it a meat allergy. So, then you have the American dog tick. That's the last one here. That one has it transmits Rocky Mountain spotted fever, again tularemia, and tick paralysis. So any of these things, ish, you have so many things to. A lot of their symptoms exhibited can be like anything else. So getting tested, especially if you've been out, it might be just a better thing. So yeah.
That's incredible. And the size that you show in comparison to the dime is
Yep.
absolutely probably the most frightening thing about that, and how prevalent. And here we are trying to do things we enjoy, whether it's gardening or hiking, And if you have a dog that comes along with you, it's unbelievable how much problem this could be, and the health issues with it.
Yeah, that is true. So yeah, so you just make sure you wear proper clothing. With autumn, it's easier, you know, it's getting cooler. So, but during like summer months, it's yeah, it's hot, it's humid. You don't really want to layer too much, but you gotta be careful. But
And I
yeah.
believe you mentioned that you can use something, spray of Pickardin, I think is what it's
Yeah,
called.
that's a general bug repellent. So there's three different kinds. But picaridin is the one which is which seems to be found in most formulas. That seems to be more effective. There's something called permethrin, but that's only for your clothes. It's not for your skin. So if you want to soak yourself in picaridin and soak your clothes in permethrin, I think you should be okay.
And something we talked about last week that have always known about, because I'm actually highly allergic to mosquito bites,
Oh yeah.
is Avon Skin So Soft. And so if every spring I go and I buy out the store, and everyone gives me glares, but I need it, and it doesn't smell bad either.
Yeah, that's the one which contains picaridin. So yeah. But
This has been wonderful. Is there any questions that anybody has about ticks before we wrap it up here? Okay, and Rashmi, was there anything else you wanted to add on the topic of bulbs or ticks?
no, I think I've covered everything. I just
All right, I just want to make one last announcement here before we wrap it up here. We are having another program on Friday at 1 o'clock about the spotted lanternfly in New Jersey. If you are not familiar with this invasive and dangerous um, bug and insect, please tune in at 1 o'clock. It's another Zoom call. You can register online. We have a woman named Amy Rowe, who is from the Rutgers Agricultural Experiment Station, and also Katie Scheid from the Wayne Environmental Commission. So this is going to be very informational, and hopefully we can help learn so that we can also then eradicate it, because it's very, very dangerous to our trees and also the vineyards. So for that alone, we need those to have wine stoppers so we can have wine. So let's eradicate the bugs so those vines can continue to grow.
yeah
So that's this Friday at 1 o'clock.
yeah that was one of the things with spotted lanternflies, and I'm sure they'll discuss this at length. But the vineyards up north in some of like upstate New York, some of them have been completely decimated by spotted lanternflies. You're planting bulbs this spring, I mean this fall, waiting for them to come out in spring. You don't want that creature around because it literally sucks. There are so many of them. Like we went down to New Brunswick and we spent like a lot of time stomping them out. That was one of the things. And now the egg masses, they will be scared, but you'll be hearing all about it. I'll be joining that presentation. So.
Well, thank you very much for giving your presentation tonight, Rashmi. I learned also, again, much more than I knew before, and I'm glad that we were able to present it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Have a good night, everybody.